Hello, everybody, and welcome to my complete guide to Monsoon difficulty in Risk of Rain 2. Before we begin, there are two housekeeping things I want to go over. Number one, I will not go in depth on how to play a given survivor. Rather, if you're looking for information on playing a character, I have a separate character guide for each and every survivor. The link to the playlist is in the top right and in the description below. So if you want tips on playing Artificer, for example, check out the character guide. Number two, understanding the item's effects and more importantly, their synergies with other ones is an extremely important step in getting better. So if you don't quite know the relative power of each item or simply don't know what they do at all, I highly recommend you watch my item and equipment tier list that I recently did an entire overhaul for the June update. All of the info in it is up to date and should help you better understand the strength of the items. Again, link is in the top right and down below. The June update not only brought new players with it, hello to all of you that are new by the way, but also some hidden changes that were not mentioned in the patch notes. For me and plenty of other players, we absolutely saw a spike in difficulty on Monsoon after the June update. And no, it was not because we're playing Rex. I won't get into the details, but just know that Monsoon definitely got a bit harder with the update. So with this added difficulty, and especially for you newer players, or really anyone that is struggling to get solid runs on Monsoon, let's go over some tips. One last thing, I'll try to not be redundant with the info in my how to get better video, which again, if you're a newer player, I highly recommend checking that video out before this one. I cover things like when to farm for chests versus spawning the boss, how much time actually impacts a given run, and more. So if you haven't seen that video, consider checking it out. Here, we'll stick strictly to gameplay tips on Monsoon difficulty. We'll talk about things like strategies to get consistent runs going, specifically focusing on the early game, and methods of dealing with bosses and other high threat situations. Let's begin with covering the early game. Now, what exactly is the early game? To me, it's the first loop of a run. The game progresses as such. Stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. After you finish charging the teleporter and move on from stage 4, you will be taken back or loop to stage 1, with it now just being the 5th stage. There are two possible tile sets for stages 1, 2, and 3, so looping the game will simply choose from one of the two stage 1 tile sets, even though you are now technically at stage 5 when you first loop. The exception here is that stage 4 will always be the abyssal depths, the fire stage. Once you start playing, you'll understand what I'm saying. Don't worry if it's a bit confusing. The point is, the first loop of a run is stages 1 through 4, the second loop is 5 through 8, third is 9 to 12, etc. You can see what stage you are on in the top right corner when in game. So the early game is the first loop, stages 1 through 4. This is where the basis for your run is decided. Now, you can definitely turn around a run if you get a poor early game, but the impact of what goes on in the first 4 stages is key to how a run ends up. The best way to get consistent early games is to, no pun intended, take risks. There are a few layers to this, the first of which being the items you choose to buy. You absolutely should not be buying every item on the first loop, and I generally stick to the rule of skipping anything that isn't in plain sight once I find the teleporter. As in, while you are around the stage looking for the teleporter, you can sit at a large chest or a multi-shop and wait until you have enough gold to buy it. That's fine. But as soon as you find the teleporter, anything else that you saw beforehand should not be backtracked to buy unless it is in plain sight when you're at the teleporter. Do not waste your time going all the way back across the map, especially if you forgot where the items are in the first place, because literally every second counts in the early game. I used to say if you can consistently make it to Rally Point Delta, which is the snow map of stage 3, and acquire the time chest for the Prayon accumulator, you're in a good spot. This rule still does hold true, meaning if you spend about 4 to 4.5 minutes per stage on the first loop specifically, you're in a good spot. However, I don't take it as literally as I used to, because Rally Point Delta is simply no longer guaranteed to be the third stage. Scorched Acres, the new map with the June update, is also a tile set you can get on stage 3, and it does not have the guaranteed Prayon, or guaranteed anything for that matter, except for orange. There's going to be a lot of orange. But don't confuse it. Going fast through the first loop is absolutely still the best way to go through the early game. Just now, I'd say as long as you get to stage 4, which is the fire stage, by about 15 minutes, you are setting yourself up for success. The 15-minute breakpoint is a good balance between monster spawn rate and their difficulty, as in, they spawn frequently enough for you to farm gold efficiently, but aren't strong enough to be a major threat in most situations. Also, the rate at which you get gold compared to the cost of chests and multi-shops is at its best ratio around this time, meaning getting to stage 4 to farm is your best bet. Again, don't waste your time on stages 1 to 3 farming, because stage 4 is superior in every way. Every multi-shop that spawns on stage 4 is always green rarity, and greens provide a massive power spike in their respective category, meaning Hopu feathers and wax quails are top tier mobility items, and the ukulele is a top tier DPS item. Not to mention the guaranteed legendary chest on top of all of this, and you can very easily change the entire outcome of a run on stage 4. Getting there around 15 minutes should should be your goal in every run. With all this talk about farming for items and looking for ones to buy, how exactly do you know what to buy and when? Well, in short, it depends. There is too much context and too many differences in each run to give an exact answer for every situation. But the gist is something like this. Playing Commando or Multi, see a large chest? You should 100% save up and open it, because if you manage to pull out a ukulele, you are completely set for the next 20 minutes easily. Playing Artificer, same idea, except you're looking for wax quail. Struggling with large groups of monsters, look for teddy bears and mobility items like goat hooves or energy drinks. Bosses and elites giving you an issue, look for armor piercing rounds and guillotines alike. Those are just quick examples of many situations. Basically, just play the game, and from the experience you get from run to run, use that knowledge to better determine what you need at any given time. Again, there is definitely better choices than others, and for that context, I'd recommend checking out my complete item and equipment tier list. Other than that, there's no real cheat sheet to follow. You'll learn in time which items are more valuable to your playstyle and at what points. Moving on to the final topic here, let's talk about dangerous situations. Which enemies are the most dangerous to encounter? How do you deal with them? If you're struggling on Monsoon, chances are it's the bosses. Not just the boss enemies, but specifically the entire process of charging the teleporter. One of the biggest tips I can give while fighting a teleporter is to leave the red circle. You don't have to continually charge the teleporter while you fight. Giving yourself some extra room to work with by leaving the zone entirely will often change the course of a fight in your favor. It's much better to waste 30 seconds or a minute instead of completely ending the run, well, because you died. Going outside of the zone to dodge Vagrant explosions, Titan beams, or really just any threat is a strat I use all the time. However, if you're struggling with the specifics of a certain fight, let's cover a few of them now to hopefully iron that out. Starting with Stone Titans. These guys are complete pushovers in the first loop, because as long as you stand right next to them, and I do mean right next to them, they will never laser you. So basically just stand at their feet and constantly strafe around them in a circle, and you'll never have to worry about their beam. Now, if you have more than one Titan, this strat isn't really as easy to pull off because they'll probably be in different spots, but in the early game, you'll usually only encounter one at a time. It may seem scary at first to be so close to a boss, but trust me, it makes the fight so much easier when you don't have to worry about their beam. Speaking of pushovers, we have Beetle Queens. The only dangerous part of fighting Beetle Queens is if you put yourself against a wall and allow their projectile spit attack to shotgun you. If you don't know, shotgunning is a term in games where a projectile attack will hit you with all of the shots at once due to them hitting the surface around you rather than you directly. Also, it could mean you literally stand directly in front of the shots, so they don't get a chance to spread at all. That would also classify as like shotgunning. But with the Beetle Queens, it would mean you are standing below them, so the shots will hit the ground, or you're standing next to a wall and they hit all around you on the wall. So just don't do those things and you're good. They are a non-threat at all other times. A lot of people's worst boss to encounter would be the Clay Dune Strider. These guys are absolutely annoying to deal with their big suck move. I don't have a name for it other than that, but it's basically when they get to low HP and start spinning around, dragging everything around them in, dealing damage, but more importantly, healing themselves based on how many enemies are in the suck. Also, they get quite a large boost to their armor during this time, which makes it even more annoying. So the strat with Dune Striders is to avoid the suck entirely. Dune Striders can be in 3 different stages. 1, normal stage where they're just chilling on the ground as usual and occasionally shoot out some heat-seeking balls and artillery barrages. 2, the big suck move, and 3, they will stand up and start pooping out some balls. Okay, this is starting to sound a little different than I expected, but just bear with me for a second, okay? This is where you can avoid the big suck. As long as the Dune Strider is standing up, they cannot go down into the big suck until they completely end the stand. As in, their animation has to be completely done and they are back to standing regularly on the ground before they can initiate the big suck. So the idea is to get them to about 30 to 40% HP, wait for them to go up into the standing tall phase, and then dump your entire load onto them while in the air. No, but really, save your massive DPS stuff like a Prion Accumulator, Royal Capacitor, or highest damaging abilities for this point, because if you can kill them while they're in the air, this will completely avoid the suck phase. Other than that, if you do end up missing the Prion, which I've never ever done, by the way, or you just don't have enough damage to take them out in the air, the next best thing is to start running away from the Dune Strider as soon as they start the suck. You can break the tether that is placed on you if you move far enough away from them while they're sucking. So if you're playing a character with a dash, just turn around and dash away. Just break the tether by moving out of range, then turn back and start DPSing the Dune Strider while it's sucking in hopes to kill the other monsters. If there's nothing around it to suck, it won't heal, and thus you won't waste a ton of time after it's done. Imp Overlords are also a fan not favorite to fight, and this is mainly due to their pretty crazy bleed that they apply. When they hold up their right hand, it means they're about to throw the spikes, and those are what causes the massive bleed. So just be prepared to dodge as soon as you see them raise their hands. Otherwise, Overlords can be dealt with in the same way as Titans. So long as you are right next to them, they not only can't use their bleed attack, but also can't teleport away. So get in the habit of getting nice and close. Make sure you are avoiding their ground pummel attack, and you should be good to go. Again, the strat kind of changes when there's more than one alive, but we're focusing on the early game here, and you probably won't ever see more than one on the first loop unless you hit a mountain shrine or on stage 4. The magma and overloading worms are kind of pushovers too, in my opinion. Just don't be in the way of their heads, because if you get hit by their head, it does a ton more damage than if you walk into their body or something. Stay at range, especially if it's an overloading worm, and you'll be okay. A good thing to note is that if you have the prey on, the explosion radius is so big that you can just target the ground if the worm is underground, and it will still hit the worm due to the radius of the blast. So if you're struggling, maybe try that out. The newly added Grove Tender boss isn't too much of a deal for me. Basically, just kite around in a circle and he should be no problem at all. You can sit behind cover when he launches a ton of wisps at you, and they will harmlessly collide with the terrain and disappear. However, as I mentioned, bosses aren't the only threat when you're charging a teleporter. The massive amount of enemies that spawn with it can end up being just as big, if not an even bigger threat than the boss itself. Everything can end up being a threat at some point in a run. Yes, even normal beetles. Totally haven't died of those before. But here's a list of those I find particularly difficult to deal with: brass contraptions, clay templars, elder lemurians, golems, imps, and wisps, both lesser and greater. All of these enemies become exponentially more dangerous if they are a fire or lightning elite as well. With brass contraptions, strafing to one side and one side only is your best bet. They always throw their attacks in the same order, left, right, and center, so changing direction in the middle of one of their attacks can end up getting you killed. Taking these guys out is priority 1 in any large group of monsters, in my opinion. Close to the brass contraptions in terms of danger are the greater wisps. With these guys, the same principle of shotgunning applies. If you are standing below them, you're asking to die because the 2 shots they fire will hit the ground and both deal damage to you. So avoid standing directly beneath them and you should be okay. Again, take these guys out as soon as possible. Regular wisps, however, are just as scary if they are in large quantities. Something kind of funny happened with the June update where there are much more wisps spawning on stages 1 to 3 than usual, but hey, I guess we got to deal with that for now. On classes that lack tons of AoE, letting wisps pile up and accumulate numbers is a bad idea because their attacks are essentially hit scan, as in if you see their little laser target you're probably going to get hit by the attack. Factor in them having a burn or a lightning orb attached by their elite versions and you'll quickly see your HP diminish. Don't let them stack up and definitely keep your distance. Imps and elder lemurians are dangerous because of their innate damage over time abilities. With elder lemurians, their melee range fire breath applies the burning debuff and it stacks based on how many hits they deal to you. Imps cause bleeding on their attacks, which are also melee, so for both, just keep your distance and you should be fine. Elder lemurians are exclusive to stage 4, save for the hidden boss of Chiaro and Renaud on stage 2. So basically just be extra careful about standing still on the fire stage because tons of elder lemurians can jump out from the ground and gank you. Speaking of exclusives, clay templars can only be found in the Scorched Acres tile set of stage 3. These guys are the Gatling gun dudes. Basically just keep your distance and get behind cover ASAP if they start firing. They will not stop firing unless you get in melee range or line of sight them behind cover. I'd recommend just getting behind cover because you're going to give them free shots if you just run at them to get into melee range. Finally, golems are just as annoying as lesser wisps, but much more dangerous. If you see the beam of a golem charging up in the later stages, especially, you avoid it at all costs. Not only is the hits damage quite significant, but again, if they are an elite and specifically lightning, the orb that detonates after a couple seconds will also do an absurd amount of damage, meaning you'll probably die. Not to mention their hits knock you back, so definitely avoid ledges as well when fighting golems. All of that to say, a lot of monsters are dangerous on Monsoon. Keep track of the specifics I mentioned here, and you should fare off better than before. Alright, and that pretty much does it with all the info I wanted to share on getting better at Monsoon. If you have any questions, which there are bound to be at least a couple, please leave them and any feedback you have in the comments below. I read it all, I promise. If you'd like to ask me specific questions, or better yet, watch me play in real time and learn from that, I stream regularly over at twitch.tv/Woolie Gaming. This weekend, so July 13th and 14th, I plan on centering the streams around teaching Monsoon. So definitely stop by if you're watching this video around that time and come and ask me some questions. Obviously, you can come by anytime and ask me questions, just this weekend will be specifically focused on teaching Monsoon. Also, consider joining our Discord server, where I always announce when I go live on Twitch or upload a new video here on YouTube. We also have quite a bit of discussion on Risk of Rain 2 and other games going on, so if any of that suits your needs, consider joining the server. Links to the Discord as well as my Twitch are below. Thank you for watching.